There are moments in life that don't just bend us, they break us. Not with warning, not with mercy, but with the quiet violence of things falling apart. And in those moments when the noise of the world fades and all we're left with is the silence of our own disappointment, something sacred begins. Not the end, but the beginning of a deeper unfolding. You see, we often think strength is about how much we can carry, how hard we can push, how long we can endure. But the truth is, life doesn't test us in the ways we expect. It doesn't measure us by what we build, but by what we become when what we've built collapses, when we're stripped down to the truth of who we are beneath the roles, beneath the expectations, beneath the illusion of control. And maybe, just maybe, what breaks us is a willingness to release, to open a door to a version of ourselves we never would have met if we had stayed. So tonight, we won't talk about surviving the break. We'll talk about becoming through it. We'll talk about becoming through it. Because when life breaks you, it's not the end, it's an invitation. When life breaks you, the first instinct is to run, to numb it, silence it, escape it. We're wired to believe that pain is proof something is wrong, a punishment, a curse, a sign we failed. But what if that isn't true? But what if that isn't true? What if pain is not the enemy? What if it's the teacher? You see, the breaking point isn't where your story ends. It's where the real story begins. Pain has a way of stripping away what doesn't matter. It peels back the layers we've built to protect ourselves, the illusions, the roles, the performances. And what's left, when the noise fades and the pretending stops, is something closer to the truth of who you really are. You never really know who you are when everything is going well. You know when things fall apart, you find it in the silence after the heartbreak. You discover it in the stillness after the loss, in the loneliness that creeps in after betrayal, in the exhaustion after chasing a dream that didn't turn out how you imagined. That's when the mirror appears, and for once, it's clean. There's nothing left to hide behind, and what stares back is real. Pain doesn't show up to destroy you, it shows up to reveal you. It walks into your life not to make you feel small, but to open the door to something bigger than what you've known. It's a portal, not a prison, but you only get the gift if you stop trying to slam the door shut. The world teaches us to fear discomfort. It tells us to move on quickly, to get over it, to smile and to stay strong. But strength isn't pretending you're not in pain. Real strength is letting yourself feel it. Real strength is asking, what is this trying to teach me? Instead of saying, why me? Sort of saying, why me? Because sometimes pain is the only language the soul has left when we've ignored the whispers for too long. We don't grow by skipping the fire. We grow by standing in it, letting it burn away what no longer serves us. And yes, it's uncomfortable. Yes, it's disorienting. But so is transformation. So is awakening. That's what pain is inviting you to do. Not to suffer, but to see. To wake up to the parts of yourself you've neglected. To come back to your values, your voice, your vision. To remember who you were before the world told you who to be. When life breaks you, it's giving you a choice of you can either build more walls, or you can build something new. You can keep pretending, or you can get honest. You can numb it, or you can let it shape you. That's what emotionally intelligent people understand. They don't fight the pain, they face it. They don't see pain as weakness. They see it as an invitation. And maybe that's the shift we need. Maybe it's not about resisting the break, but respecting it. Because broken doesn't mean beyond repair. Broken just means being reshaped. And if we let it, the reshaping can be sacred. The most beautiful people I know didn't get that way because life was easy. They got that way because they let life humble them. They got that way because they were cracked open and chose to become softer, not harder. Wiser, not bitter. More compassionate, not closed, not glazed. We admire those people, don't we? The ones who seem so grounded, so kind, so unshaken by the noise. But we forget what it took for them to become that way. They didn't just learn how to smile in the light. They learned how to breathe in the dark. So if you're standing in that darkness right now, if you're feeling broken, lost, tired, please don't rush to fix it. Don't rush to escape it. Sit with it. Listen to it. Let it speak. Not every storm comes to destroy. Some come to clear the path. And maybe that's what this moment is. A clearing. Queering. A sacred disruption. A way for life to remove what's been blocking the view so that you can finally see what matters, so that you can come home to yourself, not the version you perform for the world, but the one who's been whispering beneath the noise, waiting to be heard. And when you hear that voice, when you finally let the pain be the portal, everything changes. Not because the pain disappears, but because you do. You show up different. Muted, awake, whole. Breaking doesn't end here. It begins here. It begins here. When life breaks you, your instinct might be to try to fix everything right away, to put all the pieces back together, to cover the cracks, to make it look like nothing ever happened. But healing doesn't work that way. Growth doesn't work that way. Growth doesn't work that way. The second you rush the process, you miss the very reason the break happened in the first place. There's a wisdom in the waiting, a kind of divine timing in the slow unfolding. Life doesn't always operate on your schedule, and perhaps that's the point. Because if everything healed instantly, if every pain had an immediate solution, you'd never really stop long enough to learn what the pain was trying to teach you. You see, brokenness isn't just about what happened to you. It's also about what's now possible because it happened. It happened. But you only see that if you're willing to be patient with the process, to sit in the discomfort, to trust that you're not being punished, you're being prepared. We live in a world that celebrates speed, faster results, quicker fixes, instant clarity. But the soul moves slow. The soul moves slow. It unravels slowly, and it rebuilds slowly. It's like a tree in winter. You can't rush the leaves to grow back. You can't yell at the roots to deepen. You just have to trust that beneath the cold surface, something sacred is still happening. And that trust, that belief that something is still working for you, even when nothing looks like it's working, is one of the hardest things you'll ever have to learn. But it's also one of the most essential, because the pain doesn't end just because you want it to. The healing doesn't come just because you read the right book or heard the right quote. It comes when it's ready. It comes when you've allowed yourself to feel what you need to feel, not just for 5 minutes, but for as long as it takes. No shortcuts, no bypassing, just presence. Just presence. There's something beautiful about surrendering to that. It doesn't mean giving up. It means letting go of the illusion that you're supposed to have it all figured out by now. It means giving yourself permission to be human, to be messy, uncertain, in progress. And most importantly, it means not rushing the season you're in just because it's uncomfortable. Think about this. When a bone breaks, what does a doctor do? They don't just throw a cast on it and tell you to move on with your life. First, they realign it. Gently, carefully. And then they let it rest. They let it heal in stillness. That rest isn't laziness, it's wisdom. It's what allows the structure to become strong again. And the same is true for you. There's a quiet power in not forcing the next chapter to begin. In sitting with the questions instead of demanding the answers. In allowing the silence to speak. Because in that space, in that still, vulnerable space, is where something deeper begins to grow. Something more rooted, more real. Maybe it's resilience. Maybe it's clarity. Maybe it's a new kind of strength you never knew you had. But whatever it is, it won't come if you're constantly trying to outrun the ache. The truth is, your growth won't come from the moment you felt pain. It will come from how long you're willing to stay present with it. That's where the transformation is. Not in the avoidance, but in the attention. Not in fixing it quickly, but in feeling it fully. That's how you grow beyond the break. Not by pretending it didn't hurt, but by allowing it to shape you into someone new. Someone softer. Someone braver. And maybe that's the point of this whole journey. Not to put everything back the way it was, but to become someone who doesn't need it to be the same. Someone who can carry the scars and still move forward. Someone who knows the break didn't end them. It invited them. So if you're in that space right now where nothing makes sense and you don't have a 5-step plan to feel better tomorrow, good. Stay there. Trust that you're not behind. Trust that this isn't wasted time. Trust that your soul knows what it's doing even when your mind doesn't. Because healing isn't something you force. It's something you allow. You don't push the seed to bloom, you water it. You protect it. You give it light and air and space. And one day, quietly, without fanfare, something green breaks through the soil. And in that moment, you'll understand. A season of stillness was empty, sacred, and the slowest growth is often the strongest. When life breaks you, one of the most disorienting things you experience is the silence, the absence of answers, of clarity, of direction. It's like the universe goes quiet all at once. No signs, no reassurance, no obvious path forward. And that silence can feel unbearable. It feels like you're alone in a room you don't remember walking into, and suddenly, the light switch is gone. But what if that silence isn't empty? What if it isn't a punishment? What if the quiet is the space where something new is being written? You see, when everything is loud, when the world is pulling at you from all directions, when opinions flood your mind, when the noise of expectation drowns out your own voice, you stop hearing yourself. And maybe that's why the breaking comes. Not to destroy you, but to strip away the distractions. Ooh. To bring you back to a place where you can finally hear what's real. Silence is uncomfortable because it confronts us with ourselves. No filters, no background music, no performance, just us. And for many, that's terrifying, because in the quiet, we face our grief, our shame, our confusion. But we also begin to meet something deeper, our truth. That whisper beneath the noise. The one that's been trying to speak for years. It's easy to chase answers. We want to fix the pain, solve the mystery, put a name on every emotion. But sometimes, life doesn't hand us answers. Sometimes it gives us space. And that space isn't a void, it's an invitation. An invitation to stop running and start listening. I've come to believe that some of the most important wisdom in life isn't shouted. It's whispered. It comes not in the storms, but in the stillness that follows. And the only way to catch those whispers is to be present long enough for them to arrive. So, if you're in a season where it feels like nothing is moving, where it feels like the silence is deafening, maybe that's where something sacred is starting to grow, not in spite of the quiet, but because of it. Think about nature. Think about winter. The trees aren't dead when they're bare. They're just silent. The growth is happening underneath, in unseen places. Roots are strengthening. Life is preparing for a return, but to the outside world it looks still, it looks barren, and yet that is the work. Our lives go through winters too, times when nothing seems to be blooming. But those winters are not wasted, they are the soil of becoming. But to benefit from the silence, you have to stop resisting it. You have to stop trying to rush your way through it or distract yourself out of it. You have to sit in it. Not forever, but long enough to understand why it's there. Plus, long enough to let it teach you something you couldn't have learned in the noise. There's a line I once heard that never left me. When the student is ready, the teacher appears. I used to think that meant a person would show up, but now I realize sometimes the teacher is the silence. The teacher is the silence. Sometimes it's the unanswered question. Sometimes it's the space between the chapters of your life where nothing is certain and everything feels suspended. But here's the thing, nothing is really still. Even when you can't see it, your soul is moving, healing is happening, strength is building. The silence doesn't mean nothing is working. It means the work is happening in a way that can't be rushed. And maybe, just maybe, this season of quiet is protecting you. Maybe it's holding you back just long enough for the pieces to align, for the lessons to settle, for the right door to open at the right time. Because sometimes what feels like delay is actually divine orchestration. And sometimes the quiet is the sound of everything falling into place. So don't be afraid of it. Don't try to escape it. Lean into it. Let the silence hold you. Let it soften you. Let it peel back all the noise that was never you to begin with. Because underneath it all, you're not broken beyond repair. You're becoming someone deeper, wiser, truer. And in time, when the silence has done its work, you'll speak again. But this time, your voice will come from a place of knowing. Not just intellectual knowledge, but soul-deep clarity. The kind that only comes when you've allowed yourself to be still long enough to remember who you are beneath it all. Because what breaks us is never the end of the story. It's just the pause between the verses. And in that pause, in that silence, is where the most beautiful songs begin to take shape. And when it's time, you'll know. You'll rise, not rushed, not loud, but rooted. And your silence will have given birth to something powerful. There's a moment in every broken season where we start to ask the question, Why me? And if you've ever been there, on the floor, in tears, staring at a ceiling that doesn't blink back, you know that this question isn't just rhetorical. It's visceral. It's aching. It comes from the deepest, rawest part of us that simply wants things to make sense. To make sense. But here's what I've come to realize about that question. Why me? Is never truly about blame. It's about meaning. What we're really asking is, does this pain have a purpose? Because when you're walking through suffering, what you crave more than anything is for it not to be wasted. And that's the hard part, isn't it? It's not just the pain itself. It's the fear that it's for nothing. That what you're going through is random, cruel, or without design. That somehow you're just the unlucky one, and everyone else got the easier script. But the truth is, pain is not proof that life is unfair. It's proof that you're alive. It's proof that you're in motion, that you're in the middle of something sacred, something shaping. We forget that growth never happens in comfort. Growth asks something of us, it stretches us. It challenges what we thought we knew. It humbles us. And yes, sometimes it breaks us. What I've learned from the times I was most shattered is that pain carves space. And what it carves, it doesn't leave empty. The very space that once held your grief becomes the space that can now hold your wisdom, your empathy, your capacity to show up for someone else who's going through it. That's the beauty of suffering. If you allow it, it transforms you. Not into someone bitter or cold, but into someone more whole. It forces us to confront our values, our relationships, our identity. And yes, it's uncomfortable, but it's also honest. The most resilient people you'll ever meet didn't get there by avoiding the break. They got there because they allowed it to shape them. They stopped resisting the process and started asking better questions. Not a why me, but a what now? Not a how do I get out, but a what can I learn here? That shift in mindset from victim to student is everything. Because the moment you decide that your pain will serve something greater than itself, you begin to regain power. You don't need to have all the answers. You just need to be open to the idea that this moment is not the end of your story. It's the moment your story starts to matter. And maybe that's the reason life breaks us sometimes. To interrupt the version of ourselves that was getting too comfortable, too numb, too distant from the truth. Maybe the breaking is the universe's way of calling us back home, to a life of depth, of meaning, of real connection. It won't be easy, but it will be worth it. Because once you rise from something that tried to bury you, you become someone who's not afraid to live fully, to love deeply, to show up courageously. And that version of you, that whole, raw, open-hearted version of you, is the most powerful thing you'll ever become. The purpose of the breaking is not to end you. It's to begin something beautiful, something only you were meant to carry forward. When life breaks you, something inside goes quiet. Not silent in the way peace feels, but quiet like the aftermath of a storm. The kind of quiet where everything familiar has shifted. Your routines, your sense of direction, the sound of your own thoughts. And in that stillness, it's tempting to retreat. To pull away from people, from the world, from yourself. Not out of selfishness, but out of exhaustion. Because when you're broken, connection feels risky. Vulnerability feels dangerous. Trust feels like a gamble you're no longer sure you can afford. But here's the paradox. In those moments when you feel most alone is exactly when you need connection the most. Not surface-level interaction. Not just someone asking how you're doing and being satisfied with a fine. I mean real connection. The kind that looks you in the eyes and doesn't flinch at your pain. The kind that sits next to you in the dark and says, I don't have the answers, but I'm not leaving. To armor up, because if life already hurt you once, why open the door to let someone else in and do the same? Emotional intelligence, true self-awareness, means recognizing that connection isn't a risk. Disconnection is. The longer you go pretending you can handle everything alone, the further you drift from what makes life bearable, belonging. And that's not just poetic, that's biology, that's human wiring. We are not designed to heal in isolation. Connection doesn't require you to be cheerful or fixed. It only asks that you be honest. Because here's the truth. People can't meet you where you are if you keep hiding where that is. So many of us walk around with smiles that don't reach our eyes, nodding at small talk while quietly drowning. And what we miss in that space between pretending and being seen is the opportunity to be known, fully, authentically, without performance. See, the irony of vulnerability is that it feels like weakness but functions like strength. To open up when you're wounded is not soft, it's incredibly brave. It's saying, I'm not okay, but I refuse to disappear. That is strength. That is resilience. That is how healing begins. What I've come to believe is that pain shared becomes pain transformed. When we offer our stories, not as cautionary tales but as bridges, something shifts. Something shifts. Not just for us, but for the person on the other side of the conversation who thought they were the only one. And that's the gift of showing up in our brokenness. We invite others to show up in theirs. We make it safe. We create space. We normalize being human in a world that's obsessed with image. Now, that doesn't mean every person deserves access to your wounds. Boundaries matter. But isolation and boundaries are not the same thing. One shuts people out to avoid pain. The other chooses wisely who gets close, in service of healing. You're not weak for needing people. You're wise for seeking them. And the right people won't run from your pain. They'll hold it with you. Not because they have all the answers, but because they understand that presence is more powerful than fixing. You don't have to explain everything to be understood. Sometimes just saying, I'm not okay is enough to start the unraveling of that quiet despair. And sometimes just hearing you're not alone is enough to keep going. If life has broken you, it's not a sign that you failed. It's a sign that you've lived, that you felt deeply, risked greatly, and cared enough to be wounded. And connection is what helps you remember that those broken parts are not your shame. They're your story. Every scar is evidence that healing has already begun. But that healing accelerates when it's witnessed, when it's held, when it's heard. So if you're in that season where you feel too tired to reach out, let me offer you this. You don't need to find the perfect words. You don't need a grand breakthrough. All you need is a moment of courage to say, I need someone. That's the doorway. And on the other side of that door is where the real work begins. The kind of work that rewrites not just how you feel, but how you see yourself. You are not meant to carry your pain alone. And when you finally let someone meet you in your honesty, you don't just begin to heal, you begin to belong again. And belonging even in your brokenness is what will remind you. You were never truly alone in the first place. When life breaks you, the pieces don't just fall to the ground. They fall into your hands. At first, they're sharp, unfamiliar. You're not even sure how to hold them without hurting yourself more. And that's where the real work begins. Not in trying to fix yourself overnight, but in learning how to carry your own brokenness with a kind of quiet dignity. There's a strange and subtle temptation in pain. It whispers to us that our story is over, that we're defined by what happened, that because something shattered, we are somehow less than whole. But I've come to believe that the most powerful act a person can take after being broken is to rise, not with fury, not even with speed, but with intention. Healing isn't a finish line, it's a practice. It's the way we choose to wake up and live again, even if it hurts. Even if we don't yet recognize the person in the mirror, even if we still flinch when we remember how it all came undone. You see, when everything is taken from you, your sense of certainty, your relationships, your comfort, your control, what's left is something incredibly sacred. Choice. The choice to either let what happened bury you or build you. The choice to either become bitter or brave. While it's tempting to think we have to become someone new, the truth is, sometimes the most courageous thing we can do is return to ourselves. Not the version before the pain, but the version before. You can grow from pain, but not if you're still running from it. Not if you keep numbing it, hiding it, blaming it, blaming it. The hard truth is, healing asks us to sit with the parts of our story we wish never happened. And more than that, to make peace with them. Not because they were fair or right or deserved, but because they are a part of the tapestry now. And when you can hold those threads without resentment, you don't erase your pain. You transform it. It's not about pretending it didn't hurt. It's about realizing the hurt didn't win. And in that space, between the fall and the rising, you begin to cultivate something deeper than resilience. You begin to grow wisdom, not the kind found in books or quotes or podcasts. I'm talking about soul wisdom, the kind that can't be taught, only lived. The kind that can't be taught, only lived. The kind that teaches you how to stand when everything inside you wants to give up. The kind that softens your edges without dulling your strength. What most people get wrong about healing is that they think it means going back to who they were. But the goal isn't to return. The goal is to become. To take what was broken and build something new, something wiser, something more grounded, something more you. And yes, that takes time. It takes patience. It takes more nights than you want to count where you wonder if any of it is even working. But slowly, quietly, the pieces start to shift. The ache softens, the shame loses its grip. The voice that once told you you're not enough starts to grow quieter, replaced by something gentler, something honest. Because healing isn't loud. It doesn't always come with applause or closure. Sometimes it's just the way your breath steadies when you wake up, the way you say no to things that once broke you, the way you reach for help instead of hiding again. These are the victories that no one sees but matter the most. And maybe the most incredible part of it all is this: the very thing that once tried to break you becomes the soil in which your strength is rooted. The wound becomes the well. The wound becomes the struggle becomes the sacred. The brokenness becomes the blessing. You don't have to rush it. You don't have to fake it. You just have to stay in it. Stay in the process. Stay in the practice of showing up to your life, not perfectly, but honestly. Because every time you do, you remind the world, and more importantly, yourself, that you are still here. You are still choosing to live, and there is nothing more powerful than that. So when life breaks you, and it will, the question is not how fast can you recover. The question is, who will you become through the recovery? Will you stay buried beneath what happened? Or will you rise with a story that could only be written in the fire? Because when you choose to heal, not to forget, but to remember differently, you reclaim every part of your story. And in doing so, you don't just rise, you rise with purpose. So maybe being broken isn't the worst thing that can happen to us. Maybe it's the point where everything untrue finally falls away. Maybe it's the doorway we've been resisting, the one that leads us to our truest self. Because the cracks isn't it. They don't mean we're weak. They mean we've been opened. And when we're open, life can finally get in. The world may admire how you shine, but it will remember how you stood up when it had every reason to count you out. Not because you had all the answers, but because you kept walking when your legs were shaking, because you still whispered yes to life, even with a heart full of no. This isn't about avoiding the break. It's about allowing it to shape something deeper within you, something honest, something real. Because in the end, it's not what broke you that defines you. It's what you chose to build in the quiet that followed. And that is where your story truly begins.